Fuko Izumo, the unlucky girl whose most significant trait is her massive melons, has experienced nothing but sorrow in her life due to her utterly despicable ability, Unluck, which kills anyone that makes physical contact with her. She plans to kill herself, but then encounters a strange man, Undead, whose most significant trait is being naked, and has also experienced sorrow because he can't die. Together with some luck, or better still, unluck, they find a way to kill Undead. On the 1st of August 2120 in Shinjuku, our protagonist has just finished reading a romance manga, and with a smile on her face, she happily says, "Since I'm done with the manga, it's time to end myself." The show has just started, but I had to pause and drink cold water because I couldn't understand what the flip was going on. She stands on a bridge above a railway, and just as she's about to catch the next train to heaven, Undead shows up and says, "Hey," stopping her in her tracks. Damn, I'm all about the railway puns today. She turns and starts blabbing about not being able to enjoy romance with this body and proceeds to pull out a knife, telling Undead to stay away from her. She tells him that if he touches her body, he'll contract a deadly disease. It would seem as though Undead was wearing invisible AirPods Pro because the dude literally ignores her and walks right up to her. He splits my consciousness in two when he walks into the knife she's holding. Fuko is shocked and afraid, and I'm even more terrified. Undead then grabs onto her face and tells her he's never heard of any deadly disease transmitted by touch. As soon as he drops her down, he gets all excited that he's touched her face and begins to wait for the disease to manifest. Fuko's countenance changes, and she tells him her unluck is coming like clockwork. The edge of the bridge where Undead was standing splits, and he falls into the line of a moving train and dies instantly. Or that's what I think. Fuko feels horrible about this and blames the fact that she wasn't able to kill herself fast enough. Just then, Undead's head flies onto the bridge from the other side of the bridge. I sincerely don't know why these things still surprise me, considering his name is Undead. He tells Fuko he now understands what she means and then regenerates his body much like Eren Yeager from AOT. And now, the dude is completely naked. It's understandable knowing his clothes can't also regenerate. Fuko is so terrified, thinking he's a zombie, and she lands a blow on his windpipe and scrambles to safety. Undead flies towards her and grabs her, and then some officers head towards the bridge. Undead then carries her and flies away to the top of a skyscraper. On top of the building, he explains to Fuko that he can fly by regenerating his torn-off legs at high speeds and using the momentum to push himself in the air. He tries to get away again, but he grabs her by her leg and leaves her dangling over the building. He tells her to explain her unluck power, and he'll help her. She tries to threaten that he'll unleash her unluck, but he tells her he's holding onto her trousers and not making direct contact. He swings her around, and she finally agrees to talk out of fear. And just in case you forgot, Undead is still naked. After she calms down, she begins to narrate her story. She tells Undead how her parents died 10 years ago when she kissed them goodbye on their cheeks just before their flight. The plane suddenly developed an unexpected engine failure and crashed, killing both her parents and all 270 passengers. Up until this point, I knew Undead was a madman, but he grows even madder in my sight when he grabs onto her bare skin, dangling her jugs like two oranges. Just after she told him this depressing story, she begins to shout, telling him he'll trigger the unluck again, and he says he knows, he's just testing it out. Suddenly, a box of bananas falls from an airplane and smashes Undead. Fuko seizes the opportunity to run, but she slips on a banana peel and starts falling from the building. For someone who wanted to kill herself, she was sure afraid of death. Undead manages to save her and then tells her she can't die yet because she's the one who will give him the death that has been evading him. He then carries her to his hideout. A group of men, with one man speaking to someone on the phone, tells the person that they're going to abduct Fuko after confirming her ability. Back at Undead's hideout, he tries to understand more about the rules of unluck. He tells her to strip for him, and she starts running away, beating Usain Bolt's record in a heartbeat. Undead chases after her, and her jacket hooks on a piece of metal and she falls, revealing very bushy hair. She tells Undead that she's never cut her hair because no one will touch it. I don't even understand. Couldn't they wear gloves? Undead then begins to cut her hair, and at first she complains, but he tells her not to let go because it's only when they stop making contact that the unluck will strike. Suddenly, those group of men, the same ones we saw earlier, take off Undead's head. They put him in a special capsule, and this guy explains that they're not on her side. They're people who police unselected negators such as Undead and Unluck. Now that's when her unluck actually kicks in, striking Undead and killing the person holding the special capsule in the process. Undead breaks free and flies up. They all attack him, thinking he's useless at combat. Ultimately, Undead swipes all 4 of their heads with one strike. Their leader then tells Undead to cut off his head and throw it to him. Otherwise, he kills Fuko. Undead does this, and when he throws his head, Fuko breaks free and kisses him on the cheek. Their leader catches Undead's head, and then we see the biggest stroke of bad luck in the entire episode. A meteorite from outer space strikes Undead, killing him, the leader of the group, and destroying the building in one move. At this point, I realize this girl's power is insane and totally useless except for mass destruction. She survives, and unsurprisingly, Undead survives too. Fuko introduces herself and asks Undead for his name. When he tells her to just call him Undead, she names him Andy. Andy tells Fuko that since only a kiss did this, maybe they should both get down to the dough. Fuko sprints away again. Undead still insists that he and Fuko get down to business, but she tells him that if he forces her, the unluck won't be unlucky enough, since the more she likes a person, the bigger the unluck. And somehow, Undead believes her story. He takes her to his hideout, where he gives her a lot of heavy armor for protection because the guys that attacked them before will definitely come again. He tells her they captured him 50 years ago and he was in a lab for 10 years. This scares the daylight out of Fuko. Together, they hit the road and begin traveling on a motorcycle. Suddenly, the sky begins to crack, and Andy tells Fuko that the guys who caught him 50 years ago shot out from something like this. Suddenly, a robot-looking thing emerges from the sky and gives Andy a punch. Fuko falls to the floor but then gets up to run towards Andy, only to find out she's running backward and she gets caught by the handsome-looking individual. Andy breaks away and tries to attack the big chunk of metal, but he stops abruptly and drops to the floor. Fuko thinks it's the same fellow that caught her that stopped Andy, but it wasn't. It was the big-looking guy. Okay, I haven't found a perfect name for him yet, but I'll get there. Andy says that these two guys are external targeting restrainer-type negators, and while their powers may seem similar, it's totally different. Mr. Robot paralyzes his body, while Mr. Sexy has Fuko's will. Andy realizes he can move whenever he's been hit, so he and the Heavy Machinary enter a slugfest, and not gonna lie, this robot packs a punch. His royal sexiness explains to Fuko that Andy is quite impressive, considering he can still feel every ounce of the pain. Fuko then asks him why they're chasing them, and if they will chase them forever. He tells her that the meteorite incident blew up her capture priority level from 5 to 8, and that's ridiculously high, so even if they manage to get away from them, other negators will still come for them. Fuko then asks why they aren't chasing them since they're also negators, and he tells her they're 10 members of the Union, and they're all negators, and they're the ones who go after people, not the other way around. Suddenly, Fuko asks that if she joins the round table of the Union, would they stop chasing her and Andy? Mr. Sexy says yes, but tells her that the table is filled up right now. Unless they manage to kill a member of the table, only then can they enter. Just then, Jumbotron tries to smash Fuko, but Andy saves her. Andy then touches her face with his bare hands, and the unluck that followed was a truckload of disaster, literally. The truck smashes into Andy and the two guys, but they all escape unscathed, and Andy flies into an uncompleted building. To defeat negators, you have to find out what they're negating, and that's exactly what Andy was trying to do by flying up and down. I don't know where dynamites came from, but boy, was there a lot of dynamite in the building Andy was. They all explode at the same time, bringing the building to a pile of rubble. Andy uses this opportunity to kill Man of Steel by shooting him in the head with his finger. Just how many names have I given Robot Dude? Now there's one seat open in the Union, but Andy wants another so that he and Fuko can join together. He begins to fight the other guy who apparently is a master at Kung Fu or whatever that was. Fuko shows up at the point and tosses Andy his sword, and just as he's about to strike, he freezes because that guy used his power on him. His handsomeness asks that they pick who will go and who will not, and Andy easily says Fuko should be the one to join the 10. They can take him to the lab. Fuko is displeased because if this happens, it means she wasn't able to give Andy the death he wanted, so he begs the handsome guy to turn around, saying she wants to do X-rated stuff with Andy. Okay, now I was totally into this scene, but guess what? Andy refused. Damn, why? He says he's not desperate enough to bang a chick that's desperate. The guy gets very interested in both of them and lets them go. He even gives them a tip on where they can find another member of the 10 so they can kill the person and join the Union. He tells them it's the person with a red tie and the emblem. He also tells them if they manage to do it, he'll put in a good word for them. And ultimately, he vanishes back into the crack. And with that, they begin their journey to Russia to kill another member of the 10. They head on a boat, and Fuko is petrified because the handsome guy told them many people will still attack them on the way. Andy gets pissed off and drags her, telling her to enjoy the boat ride. Just then, battle planes begin to attack them, firing too many bullets. Andy swerves easily and then pulls off an insane move when he uses his fist as a torpedo that destroys one of the planes. Not even gonna lie, this guy makes not being able to die look very cool. Fuko asks if they're now in the Union, and Andy tells her they've not killed the person with the emblem yet. He tells her about the 3 members of the Union he knows off the top of his head. The person who made the katana he uses, Unbreakable. The engineer-like guy who experimented on him, and the person who caught him. A female who creates invisible barriers. He tells Fuko of his weakness that while he can't die, if he's trapped within an enclosed space where he can't regenerate, he's practically useless. Just then we see a lady that seems to be from outer space. She professes her love for Andy and proceeds to fire some missile-like object at him. I really don't understand what kind of twisted love this is. Their ship explodes, and Fuko sinks to the bottom and is crushed by a chunk of the ship. Andy saves her, and when she finally comes to, he surrenders to the guys chasing them. Fuko asks if he's really surrendering, and he tells her he's just buying time. Apparently, Andy had to give Fuko CPR, and her bra was in the way of her melons, and he also gave her mouth to mouth. Upon hearing this, Fuko's unluck activated immediately, and a kind of explosion in the ocean sent them flying, and Andy navigated to the top of one of the battle planes. He performs one insane move and slices the head of the pilot, and they take over the plane. Andy then tells Fuko that with this new information, he'll be able to make sure her unluck ability no longer poses as a fluke, but something that can be controlled. After flying for a few hours, the enemies discover that they've swiped their plane and made the plane self-destruct. They eject from the plane, and Andy performs another killer move he called the 5-point landing, where he lands on parts of his body and quickly regenerates them. This guy is awesome for real. Fuko lifts her head and sees a beautiful view. Undead introduces the view as Lake Baikal and tells her to go have some fun while he tracks down his former friends and gets them something to eat. She doesn't want to because she doesn't know anyone, and ultimately anyone she comes in contact with is going to die. So what was even the point? Eventually, he leaves her, and she makes her way down to the beach in front of the lake. She's confused and lost and is avoiding everyone until she meets a female who happens to also be Japanese and was painting the lake. The lady invites her to take a seat and paint too. She reluctantly agrees, and after they paint for a while, the lady asks a very deep question. She asks if Fuko prefers stuff that changes or stuff that stays the same. Even for me, this was a difficult question, and likewise, Fuko told her to give her a bit of time before answering the question. The lady tells Fuko that she prefers things that never change, and they continue painting. It's nighttime now, and the lady asks Fuko to show her what she drew. Fuko is initially shy, but eventually shows her. It's a drawing of the moon above the lake, but the difference was that there were sparkling things beside the moon. The lady asks what those were, and Fuko tells her that the moon looked a bit lonely, so she gave it some friends. She proceeds to tell the lady that she prefers things that change, and then tells the lady all about the weird person she's been traveling with, and how he has made her change a lot. That's when it happens. The lady walks towards the lake and starts walking on water like Jesus Christ, and suddenly a portion of the lake rose up. This lady is, in fact, the member of the Union they were looking for, and the one who captured Andy 50 years ago. Andy comes rushing in from nowhere, and she ultimately blocks him with invisible barriers, and Andy calls out her name, Gina. Meanwhile, Handsome, who we now know to be Master Shen, is distracted from his meditation as he reminisces on the battle with Andy and Fuko. He really wishes to meet them again, and his aide Mui tells him that Gina has encountered Andy and Fuko, and they're entering battle now. He tells Mui that those two have a lot of things up their sleeves, and he's sure they will overcome this obstacle. Back to Andy, Fuko, and Gina. Gina begins to tell Andy how much she's missed him, and Fuko asks her if she was the one who captured him 50 years ago. Jaina confirms it, surprising Fuko because Jaina looks about the same age as she does. Andy is about to spill the beans about how Jaina was 16 when she caught him, and she should be 62 years old now, and how the Union's anti-aging procedure is working for her. But she uses a barrier to shut his mouth. Andy slices his own mouth, and it regenerates back. Gina then begins to tell Fuko about how she abducted Andy 50 years ago, and fell in love with him because of how cool he is. She tells Andy to join the Union since there's an open seat, but Andy refuses. Gina decides that all she has to do is kill Fuko, and the battle begins. Andy throws some grenades, but they don't even lay a scratch on Gina, and then Gina begins to attack. making Andy flee with Fuko on his back. He tells Fuko that he is trying to figure out a way to beat Gina, and that's when Fuko asks about Andy's friends, and he tells her they're all dead. Not quite the turn of events I was expecting at this point. Gina takes off her massive hat, and it suddenly starts spinning. She throws it at Andy and Fuko, but Fuko raises her legs, so only Andy gets his legs cut off. Andy finally sees it, why Gina was negating, and he makes a plan. As soon as they land, he sets off a grenade and swallows it, then cuts off his head and throws it in the air before regenerating his whole body. The grenade explodes, spilling blood everywhere, and we could all see Gina's power as clear as day. She doesn't simply make invisible barriers, she has invisible hands that are all around her. Andy calls this power unchange, and he says since he can see it, he can easily avoid it. He falls down after exploding, and Fuko rushes to catch his head, which infuriates Gina. She accuses Fuko of charming Andy with her melons, and they exchange words. Gina tells Fuko that one day her beautiful melons will begin to fall, and they continue fighting. Andy maneuvers easily, and later hits his head on an invisible object and falls into the river. Gina tells them that she was on a mission to investigate a UMA and they were interfering, and suddenly, the invisible spaceship takes form. The fight intensifies when Gina rushes toward them, wielding the sharp cap. Andy blocks, and they exchange blows. Andy backs away and splashes a trail of blood underneath her. Suddenly he notices an opening in the invisible barrier through the moonlight. There's a hole in the barrier beneath her feet, and he and Fuko work together to throw his head inside. He knows that there is no form of unluck from outside the barrier that could hurt her, so he blinds her with his blood, lifts the barrier from underneath so the hole is now up, and has Fuko throw his head into the barrier like a shot put. His head enters, and immediately Fuko's unluck hits. A light from the ship fires both Andy and Gina, obliterating them, and obviously Andy regenerates, but Gina is lying there at the point of death. Andy and Fuko have managed to defeat Gina and now have secured the second opening on the Union's round table. Before Gina dies, she and Andy kiss one last time. Trust me, this was the most toxic of toxic relationships. So there you have it with all the negators so far. Undeed, unluck, unavoidable, unbreakable, unchange. And there's me, unbothered about how my life is falling apart. Fuko cries her eyes out after witnessing the death of Gina for someone that wanted to kill them. Her death hurt me a lot. Andy thought back to when he was in that cell undergoing experiments. Gina would come to talk to him often, telling him how she hated killing to live and how she wished for death. Andy then told her, like some badass character in a movie, that once he gets out of the cell, she'd be the first on his hit list. Of course, he was just kidding. But Gina took his word for it and started to look forward to that day. And now looking back, he realized that too. He told Fuko that her unluck helped save Gina, and he thanked her. Fuko asked if there was a way to change the Union. She asked Andy to help her out as a favor. Andy agreed without hesitation, saying the sooner he could get it done, the sooner he could get in her pants. This guy. Okay, maybe not those exact words, but we all know he was thinking it. They raised their glasses to give cheers to the dead, but it was interrupted by one of the Union's lackeys, who burst through the roof and grabbed them and threw them into the Union's underground base. Andy, while falling, bit off his 4 fingers on both hands and launched them like missiles towards the Union members. What sort of welcome is this? The members took care of the finger missiles with ease, giving Andy and Fuko time to land in their chairs. We're then introduced to the Union members, Juiz, Shen, Billy, Phil, Tatiana, Ishin, Top, Nico, and let's not forget, Fuko and Andy. I know she's a robot, but I wonder if Tatiana likes to bust it down sometimes.
What?
Suddenly a hand came flying out of nowhere and punched Andy in the face. It was Tatiana. She was still upset that Andy killed Gina. That's a relief. For a second there, I thought the punch was coming at me for what I said. After the bickering ended, Juiz summoned Apocalypse, the first ever artifact found on Earth. Apocalypse's job was to give them quests, and for every failure, they got stuck with penalties. Doesn't this sound exactly like God? While Apocalypse gave the details of the 6 available quests, Fuko was terrified and curious about what Apocalypse was, but Andy told her to just pay attention and save the questions for later. Juiz asked Nico to analyze the quests and see which ones they could handle right now. Nico then stuck a wire into his head and began the process. Okay, so far, Nico's powers are the most disturbing. After Nico was done, he said they could only handle the first 3 quests out of the 6 that Apocalypse had given. And thanks to investigators, they had intel on how to counter any interferences that might occur. He advised that the first quest should take priority because it would give them an additional member. and he also said that since they had little data on the 6th quest, they had better abandon it to avoid losing any more members. Juiz agreed and began dividing them into groups to take on the quests. At this point, Fuko questioned why they had to even do the quests if people like Gina were just going to get hurt. Even Gina said that all her efforts were futile in the end, and she just continued to suffer. She mentioned that one of the quests even involved capturing another negator, and that they were just going to treat them badly, like they did her and Andy, before she could continue nagging on just like my very stupid ex always did. Juiz told her that whether or not they listen to Apocalypse, every 3 months, rules will still be added to Earth, things like sex, race, and language. It had already been done 98 times, and so that is why they intervene. By capturing and utilizing those with power and gaining rewards, they will grow in strength until the Creator, the God residing on the other side of the book, is executed by them. Juiz stated that only those seated at the table can accept quests, and that they needed to keep a stock of substitutes in case one of the members died. Juiz also told Fuko that she ordered her execution because of the threat she posed, and she apologized. Fuko was still not satisfied, so Juiz told her that if she wanted to change things, then she just had to become the #1 in the organization by achieving the most results in the Union. All this talk seemed to bore Andy, so he walked up to Apocalypse and started to wrestle it, basically. At this point, if Undead isn't your favorite character, you deserve to be flogged 25 strokes of cane. He asked it which quest was the hardest. Apocalypse said it was the 6th quest, Spoil. Andy grinned and then chose himself, Fuko, and Shen as the participants of the quest. Apocalypse agreed before Shen could think of disagreeing, and so the quest began. It's August 21st, and Fuko was getting ready with Shin's subordinate Mui. Mui was helping Fuko knot her tie over those massive melons. Lucky girl, just copping a feel for free. They introduced themselves and talked for a bit, with Mui telling her that she was now an official member of the Round Table. As they were talking, Fuko realized from the way Mui spoke that she actually wanted to go on quests with Shen, her master, but she couldn't because she wasn't a negator, so she couldn't possess an emblem. Fuko just straight up told her that she was a useless dummy who couldn't do anything helpful. As Fuko stepped out of the dressing room to wait for the others, Andy came running out of the blue and bumped into Fuko. The next thing we see is Andy naked on the floor with his junk out for all to see. Apparently, bumping into Fuko made lava come out from the wall and splash on him. Okay, I know unluck isn't exactly logical, but where the hell did the lava come from? Andy was perfectly okay with going on the quest naked. With a body like his, I'm not even surprised. Shen tried to explain all the perks of having the suit on and how useful it would be on quests. But most importantly, the emblem was necessary to participate in quests. Andy was just ignoring Shen. He wanted to use the opportunity now that there weren't hunters on their trail to go on a date in the clouds with Fuko. While Andy was making arrangements for a possible smash fest in the clouds, the alarm rang signaling the escape of prisoner 1129. Turns out the prisoner has the ability to latch onto people, turn into their favorite garments, and take control of their body, which was perfect timing because after the prisoner got head-butted out of one of the staff and then knocked out of the body of Mui, he finally latched on to Andy. The cloth, UMA, immediately started cussing out Andy, saying that his favorite garment is one that regenerates when ripped and rushes over when called. Talk about wishful thinking. What were the odds Andy would get that exact thing? Their conversation was cut short with a burst of electricity coming through the floor and hitting Andy. The bad luck from when she touched the cloth UMA earlier had just kicked in. Unsurprisingly, Andy was fine, and he was even looking sexier in his new suit. Fuko nicknamed the cloth UMA as Clothy. Girl has the weirdest names for things. Andy was then announced to have been promoted to Seat 9 since he had captured the UMA. Now that they were all dressed up, they were ready to take on the quest. We see Fuko sticking her head out of the window like some carefree dog. She and Andy had arrived at Nevada, USA, the place where the quest would be carried out. Andy suggested they ditch the quest and head down to Vegas for a wild time. Fuko obviously said no because they had a job to do. Fuko then, reading out the details of the quest, it stated where the virus started from and its first victim. Its place of origin was a rural area in the western United States called Longing. Just then, Shen swung down from the roof of the car and hung onto the roof with the bottom of his feet. Now that's some sweet ninja shit right there. Fuko screamed and asked Shen why he was on the roof. Apparently, Andy actually left him behind. Fuko asked him to quickly get in. Once in, you could see the anger in Andy's face. Dude wanted to be alone with his girl, and now there's a third wheel. Shen proceeded to talk about the case, and as he did, Fuko slowly realized that they could possibly be dealing with more than one enemy, the UMA Spoil and its legion of zombies. But for some reason, Fuko heard Spoil as sponge. I think that Binny has been on her head for too long. Fuko became scared and wondered if they had any chance against the UMA. Shen told her that their investigators had built a barricade and scouted the place already, and he had the audio footage. When he played it, all they could get from it was that the zombies were terrifying. Yeah, like they didn't know that already. It turns out none of the investigators survived. Fuko was more terrified after hearing their screams as they begged for life. Night came, and they stopped to rest for a while, but Fuko couldn't sleep. Just then, Shen came up to her and said that he and Andy would take care of Spoil the UMA, so she needn't worry. Fuko was actually thinking of how to help. She remembered the reward for completing the quest is the location of the negator Unrepair. She felt this Unrepair person could maybe give her a clue to finally giving Andy the death he wanted. August 24th. They got to the walls of the town. Shen advised to proceed with caution, but all that talk just went out the other side of Andy's ear, because he went ahead and fired a freaking RPG at the barricade and let out the zombies. My god, who is this guy? Before Shen and Fuko could lose all their marbles, Andy insisted that since the zombies couldn't be reverted to their original state, then he should just kill all of them. Andy then went ahead and plowed through the crowd of zombies like how I go through my life savings at a casino. Once they were through the barricade, Andy broke through the windscreen and announced to the people there that he intended to kill every last one of them, but if any of them had info on the piece of shit that made them into zombies, then they better duck. Without wasting any time, Andy started going off using his special move, Crimson Waxing Moon. Once the bloodbath was over, he found one of the zombies that was still sane. He brought her back to the others and said that once she leads him to Spoil, it'll be over. Shen was still skeptical about the whole thing and told Andy that UMAs and negators work completely differently, and since they were the rules themselves, it was common for them to ensnare people without any rhyme or reason. In fact, they could have already affected Andy. Andy didn't realize and he apologized. He checked for any anomalies on his body and found a timer on his stomach. They figured it would make him start to spoil when it reaches 0. Rather than panic, Andy sat there and waited. Fuko and Shen were utterly confused, but he told them that something this small could never kill him. Damn, such a badass thing to say. Later it reached 0, and just like they predicted, he started to spoil. Andy simply healed it back, but it started again. It was a continuous effect. As if things weren't crazy enough, Andy suddenly said he was going to marry her in exchange for her telling him where Spoil was. Fuko gave him the go-ahead, and so Andy went off into the sunset with his new bride. Shen tried stopping it, but to no avail. And while that was going on, Fuko noticed a bunch of kids coming out of an underground passage, so she followed. Fuko went down after him, and just as she was about to chase him, Shen drew her back. He warned her that if she goes any further, she'd enter Spoil's range and become cursed. The kid came back and pointed a gun at Fuko and Shen. Shen noticed that the kid's timer had a lot more digits than usual. Fuko tried to tell the kids that they were here to help them, but the kids weren't having it. To prove to the kid that she was committed, she lunged at him and hugged him, showing him that she wasn't afraid of the curse and she truly wanted to help. Meanwhile, the badass himself was still getting married to the zombie woman. Andy complimented the zombie woman on how she looked very sexy in that wedding dress, and I agree, I'd definitely smash her. A paper bag over her head, and I'm good to go. The zombie woman thanked Andy. She told him that her dream was to wear a wedding dress, and she was okay with that. She then told him to please put the others who couldn't die of their misery and kill them. She pointed to the statue in front of the church and asked him to kill it. Now, Andy ain't no simp, but he couldn't refuse a request from his bride. So he pulled out another special move, Crimson Cross, and slashed it. Turns out it was actually the Spoil UMA after all. It transformed and broke down the whole church building with it. The zombies helped Andy out of the rubble, and Andy began pummeling Spoil with his parts bullet, hammer, special move. He did this and began calling on the remaining zombies. He rallied them to attack Spoil, saying this was their chance to kick the crap out of the piece of shit that turned them to zombies. Of course, they didn't hesitate, and a horde of zombies ran towards the sound of Andy and the bell he was hitting. Fuko and Shen are still underground with the kids. Fuko asks for the name of the boy that held the gun. His name was Ken. Fuko asks Ken to tell her what happened. Ken takes them back to a week ago on August 17th, when Spoil first appeared as a small floating ball. Ken was with his friends and teacher when he spotted Spoil. Spoil immediately started to rot away as much as he could. Ken's teacher took the initiative and hid them underground. The kids were scared and asked her to stay with them, but she told them with a brave face that until she finds a hunky man to take her down the aisle, she wasn't going to die. She passed on that will to the kids and told them that as long as they had a dream, they would never spoil away. The memory was still so fresh and scary that even as he recalled it, he screamed out for his teacher like it was happening in his front all over again. Suddenly, one of Ken's friends started to cry. It was Mii. Her timer was about to run out. Ken rushed over and tried to cheer her up by reminding her of her dream to open up a sunflower shop. Mii slowly cheered up, and then something strange happened. Her timer skyrocketed back to 20,000 seconds. Turns out all you had to do to increase the timer was remember your most desired dream. Somehow, Ken figured it out and had been keeping them alive for this long. Big Brother, for real. Just then, Shen heard some rumbling up top. Andy was locked in battle with Spoil, pulling out all his special moves, all while carrying his zombie bride. It was pretty intense battle. Andy was dodging Spoil's attacks a lot while staying on the offensive. Just then, Andy noticed Fuko and Shen coming out of the tunnel and threw his zombie bride over for them to keep her safe. Ken saw the zombie bride and recognized her immediately. She was their teacher who kept them safe when Spoil showed up. The kids gathered round her, and it was such a heartwarming yet bittersweet moment. A zombie walked by at that moment and touched Fuko. Then something interesting happened. When the unluck kicked in against the zombie, it affected Spoil as well. Andy then had an idea. He told all the zombies to run and touch Fuko, that if they did, they'd turn into bombs and damage Spoil. Immediately he said this. The zombie bride hugged Fuko. Fuko hesitated, but eventually removed her gloves and began touching the zombies. If I was a zombie, I would probably touch her melon. Spoil started getting hit with so much bad luck. It reminded me of when I first tried to ask out a girl. While the chaos ensued, Shen hid the kids underground. When he rejoined Andy and Fuko, he told Andy that he needed to hurry up since he and Fuko were also cursed. Spoil then did a massive AoE attack and sucked up all the zombies. Andy flew the others to safety. Spoil, after inhaling the zombies, then transformed into what looked like a Titan from AOT, but with the Statue of Liberty crown and wings. It only gets worse from here because, since its transformation had entered its second phase, all the restrictions it had before were lifted. It could now spoil anything including living matter at will. Andy, realizing this, decided to end things quickly, so he flew up to attack Spoil. But something strange started to happen. Andy started to rot as he got closer. It turns out that another one of the effects of his second phase was that he could rot anything that even came close to him. Spoil punched Andy out of the air while he was still processing his thoughts. Spoil then flew down and began to pummel him. Spoil noticed that Andy was a negator of death and gave up on punching him, saying that with how potent his powers are now, even his regeneration couldn't keep up. He then turned his attention to Fuko and Shen. Spoil then went on a rant about how his birth brought about a new circle in life, and that Shen and Fuko should be happy they get to indulge in it while still alive. Sheesh, dude's so full of himself. While Spoil was spewing rubbish talk from his mouth, Shen noticed something and stepped away from the battlefield, telling Andy that he would be back soon. Spoil didn't pay much attention to it, and he went back to talking about his oh-so-wonderful birth into this world. Okay, we get it, you were born special, rest already. Spoil questioned why humans rejected and opposed him. Fuko swiftly answered and said, "Because we have dreams." Fuko then went off on her own rant about how humans will always fight for their dreams. She told Spoil that even if her body began to rot away because of his powers, her heart would remain so long as she has a dream. Her dream was to live a long life to the fullest as a normal girl. As soon as she said this, her timer glitched and increased drastically. Shen then jumped from behind her and whacked Spoil in the head with this long staff, spoiling Spoil's brain. Shen then stated that his own dream was to become the greatest in all of creation. Of course, his timer drastically increased as well. Andy tries to warn Shen not to get too close, but Shen had already figured out Spoil's range of attack. Unless you were around his body, Spoil couldn't affect you with his powers. Realizing this, he ran to get the Nyoi Kinko staff. Now that's a mouthful to say. The staff could extend as long as the user wanted it and still shrink back to normal afterwards. I wish my staff could do that too. I'd pull a lot more girls for sure. Shen's ability activates when his target is in his field of vision, He makes them do the opposite of whatever they were trying to do. With his powers and the staff in hand, Shen went back to beating the shit out of Spoil, leaving Spoil confused as hell while he got his ass handed back to him on a silver plate. Andy asked Shen how they were going to capture Spoil. Shen pointed out that Spoil had a core that could be plucked out, but they needed to stop its ability first. Spoil required moisture in the air and bacteria to activate his ability. Andy thought of using some bad luck to create some more explosions and reduce the moisture, so he pinched the sides of Fuko's belly to get some unluck. Personally, I'd have gone straight for the huge melons instead. Andy walks up to hit Spoil with the bad luck, but the ground swallows him up before he gets close. Seeing his chance, Spoil creates a field of dust to block Shen's vision and abilities. In the midst of the ruckus, Fuko gets a brain blast. She tells Shen that if he could get Andy and Spoil into space, Spoil would lose his advantage since there was no moisture there. Shen got a devious smile on his face and he seemed way too excited about this plan. He grinned and told Andy to pull out his trump card. Well, now I'm excited too. Andy always has the sickest special moves. Andy agreed, but he added some stipulations. Shen contacted the adorable Mui and asked her to send the coordinates of Spoil. Once he got it, Andy spoke some Chinese phrase and the staff extended to space. Being in space didn't faze Spoil. He figured he could just use his laser beam to attack Andy, which he did. But Andy regenerated almost immediately and also got an entirely new look. Spoil tried to attack, but before I could blink, Andy shot 2 fingers and they grew new bodies from themselves. This guy is amazing. Then those 2 new bodies chopped up Spoil like he was some prime beef and captured his core. This was the same Spoil that they couldn't even come close to a few minutes ago. Who the hell is this new badass version of Andy? And why do I suddenly want my sister to have all his babies? Andy then chopped his arm off and sent it flying down to Earth with Spoil's core in his hand. Back on Earth, Shen was sending the kids off to safety. Once the kids were out of range, Andy's chopped off arm came hurling down, and as it landed, it grew a whole new body. Now he was shirtless, and my god, his body was sexy. Mui beamed up Spoil's core, and Shen told Fuko to stand back. Shen was unsure of how to approach this new version of Andy. He looked like a different person entirely. He walked up to Fuko and asked Shen to step aside. Shen greeted him and called him a different name, God of Victory. Victor didn't mince words and kicked Shen. Shen raised his arm to block, but it broke on impact. What's crazy is that Shen activated his ability, but he still took so much damage. You want to know something even crazier? Victor was punching so hard that his limbs were breaking with each strike. Victor used his finger bullets and finally sent Shen flying. Fuko tried touching him to give him some bad luck, but nothing happened. Imagine that, he negated bad luck, now that's OP. Victor threatened to kill Fuko, but rather than run, Fuko stood up to him and tried reaching out to Andy, hoping he could fight back and regain control of his body again. Nothing happened again. Looks like the power of love couldn't conquer this one. Shen stood up again and admitted that even though he lost today, he would get stronger because of it. Shen pulled out a move that should be in a Street Fighter game and launched Victor in the air, and without missing a beat, the Union popped out of the sky to face Victor. Victor just smiled and began fighting immediately. He used his finger bullets, but it was blocked by Tatiana. Victor thought it was a defensive move, but they were just setting up to trap him in a ricochet field. Of course, being the OP dude he is, he broke through it with ease. Nico sent 2 orbs at Victor and it cut him right in half. Victor tried to regenerate, but he couldn't so easily. Nico knew his body in and out, so he knew how to counter his regeneration. Andy once again pulled a badass move and just grew his body from his finger after shooting it to his sword. So now with his sword in hand, Victor was ready to go against the full might of the Union. The heating picks up again with the Round Table members in a heated battle against Victor. Juiz orders Top to get Shen and Fuko to safety. Victor tries to intercept by pushing the huge staff to fall on them, but Shen says the phrase to make it shrink, and they make it away safely. Speaking of staffs, I've got a staff pushing appointment of my own later on. After Top gets them out, Fuko asks him how they plan on beating Victor and getting Andy back. Top has no idea. He tells Fuko that the last time they got him was with the help of Gina, but since she wasn't here, they didn't really know how to go about it. Fuko asks Top to take her back to Victor, saying she could bring back Andy. Top thought this dumbass girl had lost her mind because literally, a few seconds ago, Victor was trying to kill her. Shen just handed her a gun and the card and told her to do her best as she ran off. Top, after hesitating for a while, ran after her and carried her back to the battle, leaving Shen and his spaghetti arms on the floor helpless. Back at the battlefield, Victor was on the sidelines watching and observing the Round Table members' abilities as they were fighting his clones. He was really feeling like a badass final boss. Just then, Top came through with Fuko in hand and was shocked to see the numerous clones on the battlefield. But this didn't faze Fuko for long because, just like a sixth sense of some sort, she quickly spotted the real Victor and told Top to throw her towards him. Top? Such a weird name, he probably gets a lot of it on the side. Anyways, Top threw her as planned, and this girl flew at Victor with her huge melons out and covered him with her shirt. Victor just stood there unfazed like he didn't even know what to do with her. Can't say I blame him though. If I had those huge melons press it against me too, I would lose all reasoning for a couple of minutes. Fuko's plan was to hang on to him for as long as possible, with the hopes that a big stroke of unluck would hit him afterward. Juiz, after hearing this, decided to go along with the plan, but she made an adjustment to it. She told Fuko to try and bring out Andy for even a second so that she could impart the stroke of unluck in that moment. Victor obviously wasn't having any of that, so he spawned some more clones to kill Fuko. But Top and the rest of the Union stopped the clones swiftly. Victor was furious. He felt disappointed seeing them needlessly protect Fuko when he could just go out and get a stronger negator. Juiz ignored his rants and ordered everyone to protect Fuko and keep all of Victor's clones busy. Fuko tried to think of a way to bring Andy back. She racked her head but couldn't come up with anything. I'd have personally preferred she rack that huge rack of hers, though, but now's not the time. Fuko then did something crazy. She used the gun to blast a hole in Victor's head and then stuck her finger in it. A new kink, maybe? Immediately after she stuck her finger in, she began calling out to Andy to gain control and come back to her. It seems that did the trick because Andy came back in control for a few seconds, and without wasting any time, he passionately kissed Fuko. Fuko went bright red and zoomed off before Andy could try anything else. She shouted at the others to quickly get away before the unluck struck. At that moment, Victor took over again and wanted to restart attacking, but Shen restrained him, while a huge meteor shower rained down on him. The shower decimated the town, and just as everyone was getting their bearing back, Fuko ran towards Andy's body and shoved the card right back into his head. Fast forward to August 31st, Fuko woke up in the hospital with Andy right beside her. Fuko turned and unleashed her special pillow attack move on Andy. She burst into tears. She was so scared that she would lose Andy and become all alone again. Andy patted her head and apologized for scaring her. He told her that while he was swallowed up by Victor, her voice was what helped him get back control. He thanked her for all she did. He also told her that the kids she saved in that town were doing fine. They would be taken care of by the Union till they were 18. Shortly after their reunion in the Union, they returned to the round table where all the other members were. Once they were all seated, Juiz told Apocalypse to proceed with the results of the quests. Somewhere in a deserted shed, there were two men seated. They were both negators. One of them was unseen, a negator who, when he closes his eyes, turns everything he recognizes as his property invisible. This ability could have come in handy a lot back in high school. He was restrained in a chair with what looked like a cut in his stomach. In front of him, the second negator. Much of his ability is unknown yet, but he mentions making the cut in unseen and how it wouldn't heal until he died. Looks like this guy took open up to me a bit too literally. Meanwhile, inside the Union, the members were gathered at the round table to hear the results of the quests. They were mostly successful, and they even got some nice rewards like the addition of a new seat, a new artifact location, and a very weird one, the unification of all languages. Not sure why that was necessary, but okay. And then we have the reward they were looking forward to the most, the location of the negator, Unrepair. Fuko was happy, but it was short-lived. The one quest they couldn't complete gave them a penalty, the addition of a new UMA, Galaxy. The UMA quickly floated to the surface. The Union members followed behind. Here we get to see a little bit of world building because from the looks of it, the Earth and the Moon existed before the known universe. I already know conspiracy theorists are going to have a field day when they see this. As the UMA expanded, it spread and birthed a new universe, galaxy, and basically everything in space. And guess what else is in space other than planets and other floating rocks? Yup, aliens. And as soon as they were informed of this, the aliens cued their entrance music and came down to Earth very menacingly. They had the same cliché reason for invading as every other extraterrestrial being in the movies. Their species was born on a planet, rich with over 1,000,000 years of history. So, they used that knowledge and trained themselves for decades to become soldiers, and then they were given ships to go out and invade other planets. With their planet in ruins and about to collapse, they are out looking for a new home to inhabit, conquer. They even had a weird-ass name to match, Axe. Sounds like the sound you make when something tastes bad. I think Juiz agrees with me about the bad taste because without wasting a second, she stepped up to the Ack Leader as the Earth's representative. The Ack Leader went on to talk about how he would spare the humans and use them as a workforce if they surrendered without resistance, and that he would eliminate them otherwise. More cliché stuff. Juiz wasn't having any of it, and told the leader to withdraw his ships. The Ack Leader proceeded to show off his firepower a bit by blowing up a big rock with a beam from one of his ships. He claimed to have done his research on Earth and found out that it was an underdeveloped planet lacking the cooperativeness to go out into space and the force capable of standing against them. Juiz asked if he considered killing all life on Earth his own justice, to which he answered, yes. Juiz then removed her helmet and simply negated his justice. But before we get to that, just look at how hot Juiz looks without the helmet. Such beauty. Back to the bad taste of Axe, the leader was confused by what Juiz said. But all of a sudden, the ships behind him started to explode, blowing up, ramming into each other. And in less than a minute, all the battleships were destroyed. Juiz then turned around all badass-like and started to give a lecture to Andy and Fuko about penalties. She told them they can no longer afford any more penalties. The reason being, they found a tablet the same time as Apocalypse, and each time a penalty is given, a slot is filled. Now there is only one more slot left until it reaches 100. Beyond that lies the final penalty, Ragnarok, a word that denotes the end, which is why they fight and resist all that comes their way. But now there was a problem. Apocalypse won't open unless the round table is fully occupied, and if they fail to fill up the final seat, they would receive a penalty in 3 months' time before they are able to take up any more quests, meaning their new top priority was filling the 11th seat. Just then, Juiz turned back after hearing the Ack Leader continue to tremble in fear behind her. Taking pity on him, she told him to tell every freaking alien out there that Earth was strictly off limits. While he scurried off Earth, Juiz started making plans to get the 11th member. She wanted Unrepair. Andy volunteered to go since one attack from Unrepair could be fatal. Juiz assigned Tatiana and Fuko as backup for Andy, and so the plan to get a new member was set in motion. September 8th, Fuko found herself in the city of Rio de Janeiro, at Leblon Beach in its shopping district. Andy was trying out some new threads for the upcoming mission. When he came out finally, Fuko became so flustered at how handsome he looked. Andy teased her and asked if she liked what she saw, but Fuko was too shy to say anything. Don't worry, Fuko. We all know exactly what you were thinking. Before proceeding further, we flash back to earlier when they were on the plane, where Andy was telling Fuko about the black market auction they were going to infiltrate. It was an auction that dealt with negators, UMAs, and artifacts that haven't been handled by the organization. It is run by mafia from all over the world, so tracking it down wasn't easy, but Juiz managed to, and now they were headed to infiltrate the ship where it would take place. Back to the shopping, Fuko was having a hard time liking any of the outfits Andy picked. Personally, I loved every single one of them, just like Andy did too. They really showed how sexy Fuko was, and best of all, her huge melons were the star attraction. While Andy kept picking out what she would wear, Fuko recalled her conversation with Juiz when she asked Juiz why she was chosen for the mission. Juiz simply told her that she was acting in accord with her vision of justice, the same way she was when she ordered Void and Shen to kill her and Andy. But she later saw the use of her unluck ability and how it could possibly kill even God. Definitely not the Jehovah I worship, but you get the point. So she asked Fuko to do whatever it takes to fall in love with Andy. Back at the shopping mall, Fuko was at her limit with all the skimpy dresses Andy kept bringing. Fuko then burst out of the changing room with the most stunning wine dress she had ever seen. Andy rated her an 8 out of 10, as if to say something was missing. He then went ahead and adjusted her posture, making her arms stay at her side, and her melons shoot out a bit more. Although at first, it seemed like Andy just wanted to have her melons on display so he'd have easy access to them. When Fuko looked in the mirror, she was lost for words after seeing how gorgeous she looked. Andy finally gave her the perfect 10 rating. As they were paying for the outfits, Andy noticed Fuko was still a bit nervous due to the number of celebrities around. So he took her out for a walk instead. Barely 10 minutes into the walk, Andy bluntly asked Fuko when he'd get another huge stroke of unluck like the last time. Obviously, this meant doing some X-rated stuff with her, and Fuko immediately understood this. So, she took off at top speed as Andy followed after. But instead of running till she was out of breath, she decided to turn around and give him some unluck by touching his chest. Clouthy helped by opening a spot so she'd have access to it, but Clouthy forgot that the unluck would affect him too, since Andy was still wearing him. After getting back to shore with half his body torn off, Andy started to talk about his counterpart, Victor. He heard that Victor mentioned being the original, and he wasn't sure if it was true or not. He didn't have any childhood memories after all. Fuko dismissed all what he said quickly and told him that she would save him without hesitation if the need ever arises. Andy stretched out his hand so Fuko could help him up, but her gloves were still off, meaning her unluck was coming. It made Tatiana bust it down on Andy's back, crushing him in the process. It was good timing too because the mission was about to start soon. Tatiana briefed them about the mission, saying that she would cover the outside, while Andy and Fuko infiltrated the inside. Just before she leaves, she gives them some tags that would let them gain access to the auction. She also lets them know that the tags were made to identify them as a married couple. Cue awkward intro. As they walked in, Andy tried to prepare Fuko's mind for what she was about to see and hear, but she already overheard some nasty conversations that made her very upset. When they found seats, Fuko looked very down. Andy asked what the matter was. She asked Andy if it was better to be captured and sold off at the auction or to be brought to the Union. Fuko thought about what kind of person the negator being sold off was before all this mess. Before she went on for too long, Andy told her about why he joined the Union. He said that he joined on a whim because of her, but later he realized that with the Union, he could fight his destiny of being a test subject or destined to keep living alone. So, to him, being with the Union was the better choice. Topside of the ship, some shady-looking people infiltrated the ship. It was Unrepair and his cohorts. Tatiana spotted them and alerted Andy and Juiz right away. Juiz explained that they were negator hunters, and their objective was to seek revenge on the world. Upon hearing this, Fuko jumped on Andy's back and rode into action. Andy charges on with Fuko towards where the negator was being kept. He figured the negator hunters would be heading there as well, so he wanted to get there before they did. Below the deck, the negator that was being held used the commotion going on topside to try and escape, but he got caught and was now at gunpoint. He then started to remember how he got in this mess in the first place. We flash back to September 2nd at his school. One of his classmates came up to him and started talking to him in English, asking for his homework to copy off of. At that point, Chikara, the negator boy, started shouting and complaining about how everybody was speaking just English. Everyone else just stared at him funny as if he were a mad lad. Just then, two shady dudes in suits came from behind him and tased him. The next thing he knew, he was waking up in the cage getting prepped to be auctioned off. And now there's someone here with a gun to his face about to kill him. Things were about to get worse, because the negator hunter came in from behind the guard, walking towards Chikara. Everyone seems to be coming in from behind. I think I'll try it with my girlfriend later. Unrepair, after seeing what Chikara could do, concluded that he was an external type negator who could restrain anyone in his vision. Unrepair approached him, but because Chikara couldn't speak English, he found it hard to communicate. Faced with this dilemma, the big brute of their group opened up his case and brought out a Gatling gun. All he cared about was if the negator was useful to them or not. He gave him a choice, to use his ability or die, and he had 5 seconds to decide. After the countdown, he wasted no time in riddling him with bullets. But luckily for Chikara, Andy jumped in and saved him at the last second. Andy immediately began to assess the situation and tried to figure out their abilities quickly, but as he was doing so, Unrepair swiftly dashed at Andy and cut his neck, telling him that the wound wouldn't heal until he died. He then asked Fuko to hand over the negator because they had dibs on him. Andy charged at Unrepair, then Fuko sliced off Andy's head, and without missing a beat, Andy used one of his special moves, Part's bullet head, and crushed Unrepair's nose. Unrepair dodged it and cut off Andy's arms. This didn't stop Andy, he just cut off another section of his arm and used Part's bullet forearms to launch another attack. One of Unrepair's lackeys, a woman named Latla, rushed out to deflect the forearm bullets. Unrepair asked Andy to join his crew, saying he'd have more fun with them. This dude really thinks he's Luffy or something. Andy declined, saying that he had lost interest in Unrepair since his ability wasn't able to actually kill him. Then this unrelentless guy decides to ask Fuko if she will join him, which she declines disrespectfully. He then mentions that he needs strong people on his team and Chikara was beyond useless. He mentions that they would kill him and still proceed to find more members to recruit. And when they had finally recruited enough, they would start taking over countries. Fuko becomes upset and starts asking him why he is fighting against human beings when he should be fighting God. But the guy just wants to get rid of Chikara and then throws his knife. Undead attempts to block it, but he just wasn't able to. Then I am blown off my brains when Fuko jumps in to protect him, knowing fully well that once the knife hits her, there's no saving her, like the stupid idiot he is. After seeing that he has caused so much damage, Unrepair proceeds to run away, and then the auction guys ambush Andy, Fuko, and Chikara. Fuko is now bleeding at this point, and Chikara makes a move to help her stop the bleeding, but all to no avail. Chi then has flashbacks of the moment his mother died. It's at this point that the auction guys decide to shoot at them, and Chi, for the first time in a long time, makes useful use of his powers and stops them. Now things have really taken an interesting turn. Will Undead catch up to Unrepair? Tatiana burst in like RoboCop. Okay, I guess I've been waiting to say that for so long now. She's fighting these two insanely strong guys, and she wonders what powers they are negating. Just as she's figuring shit out, Andy informs her of what Unrepair did to Fuko, and he tells her that they have 1 hour at most to kill him. Upon hearing this, our big metal feminine ball gets into a really bad mood, and then we see a flashback to the day that Andy and Fuko finally made it into the round table. I remember watching this part and thinking that RoboCop had a lot of anger management issues. The boss finally got them to stop fighting, and they did, but not long after the meeting, Tatiana told Andy to meet her in the fighting area. Now things were about to get really interesting. Once in the fighting area, Andy told Fuko to stay back, and Tatiana started hitting our guy with a heavy amount of attacks. Andy easily dodges every single thing, and it makes me wonder just who the hell this human being is. Tatiana begins to tell Andy she hates him for being clueless about Gina's feelings, but Andy, being the usual badass he is, tells her he knew about it, but he killed her anyway. This makes Tatiana's anger enter into a second gear, and she begins throwing more punches than a guy in a fight who has nothing to lose. One of the punches heads straight for Fuko, and that punch would have honestly smashed her to bits if Andy didn't swerve in to save her at that point. Tatiana calms down a bit, realizing she just almost killed Fuko, and at this point Andy is back to his default setting. He sees Tatiana is a bit distracted, and then he just lunges at her and starts dangling his, you know what, at her. Tatiana, the real Tatiana behind that huge chunk of metal, loses her cool and is about to release her power. An announcement is passed that everyone should evacuate that place with immediate effect. And Undead is instructed harshly to take Fuko and run away, saying that the armor Tatiana is wearing isn't meant to protect her body. Rather, it acts like a restraint to contain her ability. This is serious. We are also told that this power, once released, is capable of wiping out an entire town. Every single person gets into a frenzy. Everyone is running helter-skelter, trying to save the things important to them and evacuate the place to a distance of at least 3 kilometers away. Something absurd happens right here. Fuko also lunges herself at Tatiana and begins to apologize, and she tells her that it was actually her unluck that killed Gina and that she would like to know everything about Gina and her. Instantly, Tatiana calms down. She didn't seem like she was going to explode again. Tatiana and Fuko became actual friends, and funny as it might sound, they shook hands. We're brought back to the heated moment of the present to continue our beautiful fight, and we see that Chikara is beginning to get tired, because he had stopped those bullets for quite some time. Andy realizes this, and carries him and Fuko out of that place immediately. Andy tells Tatiana that killing Unrepair takes the highest priority, and he won't come back her up. This metal chunk of feminine goodness tells him not to even bother. She tells him to take Fuko and head to the top, and the next thing we see is that she activates her power at her own volition. She tells Andy that Fuko is the first friend she ever made, and she will not stand and watch anyone hurt her. The guys she is fighting now think she is defenseless and shoot at her, but they don't get through. Then they result in using poison gas. We're taken back to where Tatiana's misfortune began. She was just celebrating her 5th birthday, and the moment she killed her parents and wiped their house out of the face of the earth. She started running away because she couldn't understand what was going on, and then she was captured by the mafia and put up for auctioning. They were about to sell her for 200 million when the Round Table decided to send Unfair to rescue her. She actually asks him to kill her, saying she would open her mouth wide for him to shoot her. He agrees, and when she opens, my guy slips in some cake. Our girl wants to live again. Then Nico made the armor for her, and that's how she became a round table member. Andy's finger bullet misses its targets. He fires more, but they all miss, most likely due to Latla's abilities. He tells Chikara to use his unmove ability to help them with the fight, and this leaves them stuck in mid-air. Andy is able to move one of his hands and fires his finger bullet. This is because it's not within Chikara's line of sight. The finger then hits Latla when Chikara releases his ability. Andy tries to make use of this tactic again, but Unrepair sends a giant blade at them with an artifact called Blade Runner. Didn't think they had seen the show before. Clothy must hate being on this guy's body. Before they can blink, Unrepair sends a lot of blades at them. Surprisingly, Chikara stops the blades because he is too scared to even move. The boy's fear finally came in handy. Being a scaredy cat can save the day. Andy decides to use Fuko's random unlock scenarios to defeat Unrepair. Unrepair's ability makes the wound he inflicts to never heal so far as you try to do that. I wish he could inflict some wounds on the women that have broken my heart.
What did he say?
Unrepair then flies towards Chikara, Fuko, and Tatiana. As he gets close, Chikara uses his ability to stop his movements and they escape. Tatiana asks if Fuko's wound is okay, but Fuko is too infatuated with Tatiana's hair. I feel like she suddenly has a younger sister. Andy explains that his last attack made Unrepair's ability to deactivate, and he has started healing slowly, and thanks her for helping him out. Chikara tries to thank Tatiana, but she tells him not to lay his eyes on her young and vulnerable body. Apparently, she is still naked out in the cold ocean with no clothes. Someone needs to call UNICEF to step in immediately. Fuko invites Chikara to join the union as one of them, but she wants Andy and Tatiana to help keep him a secret from the rest. They give him a week to make up his mind about it. A union plane then comes to pick them up, and they head out. September 16th, Fuko and Andy are waiting in front of Chikara's school for him. Just as they're discussing, Rip shows up in front of them, but he's looking as young as a kid. What could have happened to him? Fuko is surprised as to why Rip is still alive and how he survived. He says that he definitely died, but ended up like that, and that he'd be back to normal soon. Drops the gun while Andy rushes to her. Such a chivalrous man, slowly setting the pace to get into her pants. Andy picks up the gun and has the same vision. He tells Rip that he hasn't seen something. As they are discussing, Fuko and Andy get a message to help the roundtable members that are engaged in a fight. Rip then refers to his group as Under, saying in 3 months they would flip the world and it would become fair. He flies off to the train tracks while asking Andy and Fuko to join them. Andy, God. A train passes by and Rip disappears as it does, just like in those horror or thriller movies. I guess he feels like he's the coolest kid on the block. Chikara appears behind them and it seems he heard everything that was discussed. Andy asks him to join them and kill God, but nobody asked for this level of crazy. He turns around and stops Fuko with his ability. Unfortunately for him, Andy wasn't in his line of sight. Andy appears behind him saying he wouldn't fall for that trick. They then head into Chikara's class to discuss. In 3rd year, and she can't contain her excitement. Never thought I would actually see someone excited about school. Chikara asks Andy when the world would end, and he says between January and April depending on how their quests go. He tells them he plans to live and atone for his sins. Chikara then tells them how he killed his parents in his 1st year. A truck drove by and crushed them, his dad dying instantly. This would probably bring him and Fuko, and tells them how he wanted to kill himself many times, but his parents wouldn't want that. He decided to keep living because he thinks it'll make him a better son. He thanks them for saving him when he got captured by the mafia. He also thanks them for letting him know that his ability can be used to help people. Chikara then asks to join the team and says he won't run away anymore. He definitely will by the time he gets sent on quests with Andy. That guy is just crazy. Suddenly, one of Chikara's classmates enters the class and notices Andy and Fuko. He calls Andy an old dude that's repeating the same class for the 10th time. Can't argue there, guy probably never got a proper education. Fuko starts laughing at Andy while Chikara tries to handle the situation with him. Andy gets up and starts tickling Fuko until she passes out. Yet another technique for him to cop a feel in the process.
Good morning,
He's quite the sneaky lad. Rio, Chikara's classmate, then tells him that he got a basketball scholarship to Anti-University. It's time to go. Rio notices something is off and chases after him. Chikara uses his ability to stop Rio's movement in place and thanks him for making school fun. Andy carries them and jumps out the window and they enter the car. Rio heads down to chase the car, but Chikara makes a request for all of his classmates' memories to be wiped out. Just like Rio then heads back not knowing why exactly he was out of breath. They drive off with Chikara becoming the 11th member of the Union. Fuko decides that she wants to beat God and asks Andy to teach her how to fight. Back at the Union, a special training regimen starts for Fuko and Chikara. Members don't take this suggestion too well. Tatiana tells him that innocent lives would be taken, but he doesn't seem to mind that. Billy calls Tatiana naive and attacks them and he's bleeding out. Top tells Nico to help Ishan out, but Billy mocks them at how he was able to hit the unbreakable one. This jaw, killing him in the process, or so I thought. Billy's eyes suddenly change to a gold color and he snaps his head back in position. To defeat God. Now he's just trying to show off. While this is happening, fire erupts from the floor of the base and a creature of fire and lava emerges from beneath and takes the round table in his hands with Billy in the middle. Billy tells Latla show up there on top of the monster, and Fuko refers to them as a couple. Latla immediately negates this statement by slapping the joy out of Rip's face. Poor guy. Reminds me of the way Sakura slaps Naruto. Andy concludes that Billy is a part of Under and has betrayed them. Tatiana refuses to believe what he said and tells him that he doesn't know anything about Billy. She reveals Billy's ability and calls it unbelievable. Boss, isn't that all the he does look like Ifrit? Andy tells him to fall back and save himself. He runs again. Rip makes fun of him as he runs out and ends up referring to Billy as boss. That's right. The third seat of the round table is the leader of Under. This further shatters Tatiana's poor little heart. Top gets angry and attacks Bound and breaks his leg in the process. Can copy their abilities. Talk about an unfair advantage. As to join him as a way to repay the favor of saving her life. Fuko shoots Billy to protect Tatiana and cries as she doesn't recognize the man who once saved her. Shoise tells her teammates that they must stop Billy from escaping. If they lose the round table, then they lose their only way of opposing God. Right now, the God they should be worried about is the cowboy in front of them. Andy tells Huiz that any normal attacks they try wouldn't work because Latla is there, so he plans on using Fuko's unlock to their advantage. Huiz sends out different orders to her teammates as they prepare to stop the monster Ume, burn, and retrieve the round table. She tells Tatiana to wait on standby because she'd probably be too useless to help out at the moment. Their operation begins. Fuko tries to comfort Tatiana before leaving and tells her that she believes Billy is a good man. Tatiana then asks Fuko to save Billy, and she heads out with Andy. Will they be able to stop Burn and bring back their beloved comrade? As Billy and his subordinates head out, Rip says that their operation was pretty much a cakewalk, but Billy tells him not to underestimate them, and they would soon halt their escape. Rip tells him that killing God isn't their final objective, and they want what comes after like he promised them. Billy agrees and says that would only be fair. Andy and Fuko fly up to try and stop Burn and Billy. He tells Fuko that Billy and Rip most likely to work with them if his true objective is God-slaying. He says that it wouldn't make sense for Billy to create a different organization over a difference in opinion. They decide to ask questions later after giving Billy a knuckle sandwich for making Tatiana cry. Meanwhile, Nico in the facility to keep them safe from Burn's heat. He tells them to release electromagnetic cables to help and slow down Burn. They plan to make it look like a capture scenario while they wait for Fuko's unluck to strike. This means Andy is going to get some good loving action from Fuko soon. I don't mind some unluck if I can slip my hand in her. Anyway, Andy and Fuko finally catch up to Burn, but Billy uses Juiz's Unjustice ability to make Fuko slice her neck. Andy puts his head in the way to get his own head sliced off. Fuko kisses her man on the cheeks and Andy sends his head flying into Burn's mouth. Unluck strikes, making the electromagnetic cables to misfire and attack Burn. While that is happening, the temperature is dropped, and Burn's body is frozen solid and it starts falling back down. Billy tells them that their efforts are futile, and they can only buy so much time. Nico's subordinates then send out an iron pillar, but it fails to fire. Thanks to Fuko's unluck, it eventually does and impales Burn's body, and Andy as well, stopping it in its tracks for good. Seriously, how is he comfortable with these things happening to him? Andy rushes and punches Billy, but he just uses the undead ability and heals himself. Andy asks Fuko to hand over the gun and katana she was holding before she kills herself. Pretty sure she'll kill herself if she keeps hanging out with Andy. Latla asks Rip if they should help while she suffocates him with her melons. Rip tells her they should hang back and see if Billy is qualified to be their boss. The fight continues with Billy using different abilities of the Union members. He then makes Fuko walk off the platform and fall. Andy rushes to save his babe before she goes splat on the ground. Just then, Byrne reactivates himself since his core wasn't smashed, and Under continues their escape. Tatiana flies to Billy after catching Andy and Fuko. Huiz asks Tatiana if she still has feelings for Billy. She tells her that their operation hinges on her answer. Tatiana catches up to them and attacks Billy, asking him why he betrayed them. He tells Tatiana to get over herself, and that she doesn't matter. She then releases her ability, but Billy's injustice doesn't seem to work on her. She's too young to be so in love with a man anyways. Billy loses Apocalypse and Fuko snatches it out of the air. Andy tells Billy that without the book, he wouldn't be able to accept quests, which makes the round table he stole useless. Unfortunately, Apocalypse gives Fuko horrible visions, causing her to drop it. That book is really nothing but trouble. While Apocalypse tries to escape, Phil grabs it. It seems the book's visions don't work on him. Shen then shows up on Goku's Nimbus Cloud. Where did he get it? I've wanted one since I was a kid. He then gives Andy and Fuko a ride on it. Billy tells Andy that he'll be lending Apocalypse to them, but he'll retrieve it before the quest deadline. He tells Andy to inform Juiz that they would be securing the Ark. Andy asks Juiz for permission to tail Billy as he leaves, but Juiz tells him not to worry. She asks her teammates to regroup because there is an important matter she wants to discuss. The members of the Union gather around their leader. Juiz asks Nico for a status update, and he says the damage wasn't so bad. Stealing Apocalypse was the right move because they would have suffered more if another fight broke out. He also says that Fuko will be fine because the human brain is remarkable. You'd be surprised how unremarkable it can be when it's time for school exams. Remarkable indeed. Andy then starts questioning her. He says that something was off with the policy she made when the UMA Galaxy was announced as a penalty. He tells her that the decision she took was pretty laid back and runs the risk of losing members, with Ragnarok drawing close. Shen also asks her how she knows Victor so well. He says that Andy hadn't let Victor out in nearly 200 years. Just how old is that guy? Doesn't this also mean he's grooming Fuko? Poor girl. If only she knew. Shen includes that Victor seems to have known the existence of Galaxy before the penalty was even added. Nico chips and says the arc that Billy mentioned has him very curious. As all the questioning goes on, we see flashbacks of these different events that have occurred. He says that the Union doesn't have any data on an artifact named Arc, so what could it possibly be? Juiz takes off her helmet gracefully, revealing her beautiful eyes as she prepares to answer them. Firstly, she tells them that the world has been in a constant loop by God's hand. She created the Union in order to put a stop to this. The others try to make sense of what she said. Top stupidly asks what a loop is, showing that he definitely skipped classes. Fuko puts pieces together and says the images from the visions must be from before things were recreated. Juiz says this is a result of her inadequacy over countless deaths. Andy asks her why she's the only one that remembers the loop. They flash back to when Apocalypse unified all the languages on Earth and altered the memories of everyone. Juiz says they are different ways to find out about the loop, but she's been using the Ark to experience it firsthand. Andy asks her to give them proof. She then proceeds to describe how the world will end and begin. So basically she's like some kind of god or prophet that knows the beginning and the end. That's so cool. Juiz tells them that the planet and all life will be destroyed by God, and not even flying into space would save them. This is too shocking for Chikara, and he starts convulsing on the spot. I still don't know how they let him into the Union. She then says a new Earth would be formed with fragments of the old one still around. Apparently, the fragments of the old Earth are the meteorites that strike due to Fuko's unluck. You could say she's literally been hitting Andy with his past. Juiz tells them that's all the proof she currently has for them. She asks Andy about a mole behind his ear, and Fuko confirms it. She doesn't even know her man that well. I guess she has more reasons to be wary about Juiz now. Andy concludes that Juiz and Victor must have been really close for her to know that. Fuko, on the other hand, can't seem to calm down, and I wouldn't blame her. Due to the undead ability, Victor has been living in the world since. That's why she and Juiz are the only ones that know about the loop. Juiz tells them that the only way to avoid the rules is to either die or kill God. She apologizes to them for not saying the truth until now. They decide to follow her to the end and get seated at the new round table that was carved by Ishin. The members resume their meeting. Juiz says they have to find out the location of the round table stolen by Under, and also pinpoint their base of operations. She tells Andy and Fuko to investigate a book that may hold the past and future events of the world written by an artifact. She pulls out a book from her jacket and reveals it to them. That's been quite a lot. Will the Union be able to retrieve the round table and stop Billy in time? And what is this mysterious book Juiz has revealed? Fuko recognizes the book at first glance, saying she uses it as her life's Bible. What exactly is wrong with this girl? She says it holds the longest-running shoujo manga record, and says the book is known as You Me. Juiz then pulls out another volume of the manga, stating that the events of it are similar to when the aliens invaded them. She pulls out even more volumes this time and says how the stories look like a prediction of the battle with Spoil. Is no one going to ask how she's just pulling these out from her jacket? Is this her life's Bible as well? Top asks her if she's being serious and what this whole manga thing is. Fuko and Tatiana suddenly surround him, telling him how important the book is, and how could he not know anything about it. I guess this is a girl thing because they all seem to know so much about this manga. Fuko mentions that nobody knows anything beyond the manga, and there's no information about the author as well. Juiz says that the manga might have been drawn with the artifact called G-liner. The objects drawn are not affected by the addition of new rules, and that the raw manuscript might still be in the original Japanese language it was written in. She tells Andy and Fuko to gather intel on the status of the raw manuscript and on the author known as Ano Un. Andy says the two would most likely be at the publisher, so they have to whip up a killer manga and bring it to them. So the world is going to be saved by them writing their own stories. Who would have thought? It's December 3rd and we see a Star Wars intro screen giving us a quick rundown of how the Union was betrayed by Billy and what Andy and Fuko need to do next. Are they allowed to do that? Anyway, our love duo head into a room that looks like an art studio. Here is where they would make the next best manga in town. Fuko starts throwing a tantrum after some time, saying that there's a difference between being a reader and a writer. I agree with her on that one. Andy then calls on Unigly, which seems to be the AI computer in the room. It brings up a screen showing a basic manga pipeline. Fuko is shocked that Andy has experience in making mangas, and so am I. He says he'll be able to handle the composition and background art, but Fuko needs to come up with the rough draft, which is the base for it all. He tells her that she has to think up the perfect love scenario, and Fuko agrees. She says if the Yumi manga is a book of prophecies, it may hold the key to stopping Billy and Under. She wants to help Tatiana and also be able to understand her feelings better in order to summon bigger strokes of unluck. Andy is in for a world of more pain and suffering. After a while, Fuko hands in her draft and Andy loves it. He says he'll have the storyboard ready in an hour and calls in Miko, who is Nico's assistant, and some other guy to help with drawing. Shen shows up asking if he can help, but Andy tells him to go pump some iron and he leaves like a heartbroken kid. Andy tells Miko to bring the gear he requested, and she appears with a black backpack. She slaps it on Fuko's back, and robotic arms sprout out of it. Andy says that they are operated by brainwaves, which would make their work easier and faster. I don't know if it was unluck or coincidence, but the arms rips off Andy's trousers, leaving him half naked. What are the chances? He really can't escape his default form. He gives Fuko an hour to learn how to control the robot arms. Tatiana then shows up and helps her to train. Tatiana mentions how she wants to help with the manga, and Andy pops out with the finished storyboard. The rest of the manga team gets to work, drawing and surviving on energy drinks, a typical weekend scenario for me. At some point, Juiz comes to offer her help. Fuko tells her how she reread the manga and noticed some gaps. Nothing about Billy's betrayal seemed to have come up. Juiz suggests that the author might have purposely left the plot holes. Everyone is exhausted, but Fuko manages to finish it up, and Andy approves of the manga. On December 5th, Andy and Fuko head to the publisher's building. Fuko decides to go inside alone since Andy doesn't really look the part of a manga artist. Andy ends up waiting outside, abandoned by his one true love. While inside, Fuko is waiting when a young lady shows up to review her manga. Ironically, the title of the manga is Undead plus Unluck, with the plus being silent. The lady asks Fuko how long it took her to draw, and she says a week. The lady reviews and critiques it and asks if she wants to submit it for the contest, but Fuko asks her to see the raw manuscript as a favor. They head to the back, and the lady pulls out one of the drawers, revealing the manuscript in Japanese. This confirms the manuscript's origin. Fuko then asks the lady about any rejected parts of the Yumi manga, and she confirms they were some arcs that were left out. The Kohei's betrayal, the Four Kings of the Four Seasons arc, and Ando's past arc. Juiz gets the information and asks Andy and Fuko to get in contact with Ano Un immediately. As Fuko tells her they don't know the whereabouts of Ano, The young lady coincidentally takes a call with their target. Talk about perfect timing. Fuko asks the lady if she can speak with Ano, but she says that wouldn't be possible. Andy then suddenly appears out of nowhere and scares the lady into giving Fuko the phone. Fuko requests that Ano reads her manga. The young lady is shocked when Ano responds and says she'll meet with them if the manga is an interesting read. She tells them to come to the bench at Stanley Park in Canada, and then hangs up. Thanks for watching, fellow weebs. If you enjoyed this recap, dive into the next video or playlist. See you amazing folks in our next amazing recap.